Evening, I'm going to call the Select Board meeting for Monday, November 4th, 2024 to order, and note that we will be going into executive session and we will return no sooner than 6 PM. Could I get a motion, Pete, please?
Pursuant to Mass General, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation in the Port Restaurant versus Town of Harwich matters. As the chair has declared that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the town. And item B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Sections 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 22FG, to review, approve, and or discuss the possible release of executive session meeting minutes dated August 5, 2024, August 19, 2024, August 23, 2024, September 4, 2024, September 9, 2024, September 23, 2024, September 30, 2024, October 7, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Good evening. I'm going to call the Select Board meeting back to order. We were in executive session earlier this evening, and we did take action on item A and B to approve minutes with some revisions. As required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. Hearing nobody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the consent agenda, I'm going to have to ask.
Public comment and announcement. I'm going to go to Emily first.
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. Just wanted to give folks one last reminder that tomorrow, November 5th, is Election Day. Polls will be open at the Harwich Community Center, 100 Oak Street, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That is the voting location for all voters in the town of Harwich, all 4 precincts. We've had great turnout with early voting. Between returned mailed ballots and early in-person voting, we are already at 48% voter turnout for this election. So we're very excited about that, and we look forward to seeing people tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Emily. Thanks for all your hard work. The public comments and announcements currently on our agenda. The annual town report photo contest. Photos due by December 2nd, 2024. Did you have a comment?
Just about. I'm not going to change it. I just want to remind everybody when you're submitting photos that there's a front cover and a back cover. So when you're thinking about how that would work out when they do landscape, it looks really odd on the front if you've got a really wide picture.
And item B, Dawn, I'll let you read that. You're doing that.
Okay. Just a reminder, everybody, that on Monday, November 11th, 2024, at 10:30 a.m., we're going to hold a Veterans Day ceremony at Evergreen Cemetery. That's in East Harwich.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment and announcement?
If I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Just want to add to the Monday, November 11th, 2024. My family is going to be providing a golf cart, so that will help people getting from that parking lot, which is a long way away. We did it last year, and it was pretty helpful. A lot of people used it, so the golf cart will be able to shuttle people back and forth. So if you're interested in going, but you don't want to make the long walk, there is transportation.
Very nice.
Thank you, Jeff.
Very nice of them.
And Ashley?
Thank you. Ashley Symington, Director of Youth and Family Services. I just wanted to let people know this month's monthly programs, what they're going to be. Our grandparenting support group is set to meet this coming Thursday. We have a choice between times, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning, 6 to 7 p.m. at night. That is at no charge, free, registration free as well. Just folks are welcome to come on over, and it's going to be at Albro House. Understanding Mental Health series this month will be next Thursday, which is the 14th from 6 to 7 p.m. up the street at the community center. This month, big topic, we're going to be talking about understanding ADHD, which is a pretty important one. And then on Thursday, November 21st, so the week before Thanksgiving, we will have this month's Raise 'em Up is going to be on big emotions, what they are, and how to help children and teens navigate them. That's going to take place over at the 204 from 6 to 7 p.m. Both of those are also at no charge, no registration required. Folks can just come
Great.
to those as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment and announcement?
Good evening, Madam and Select Board. Patrick Ott in East Harwich. You know, the Select Board has a job that I would not want to do, I couldn't do, but the Select Board is elected to represent the Harwich residents. Our system of democratic governance ensures that everyone has a voice, and how does the Select Board know what the residents in Harwich think and want? The Select Board works for the people of Harwich, not vice versa. The Select Board wishes to restrict public input into matters that are important to the residents. If adopted, the public policy restricting public input into the governing process of our town. Okay, I agree the Select Board meetings need to be on point, fast and efficient, but not at the cost of public input. To achieve fast and efficient meetings, what if the Select Board implemented the same policy onto their own agendas? 20 minutes each, 3 minutes speaking, and only one speaker per topic.
Patrick, the only thing I just want to say is you will have an opportunity to talk about it when we do the policy
I didn't
discussion.
know that.
You will have an opportunity, and,
Yeah, okay.
sorry, go ahead.
I can finish now or finish?
It's fine. If you
Okay.
want to finish now, I just want to let you know that you will have that
I may
opportunity.
come back up. Our public voice is critical in having Harwich government represent the people of Harwich. The Select Board is elected by the people to represent the people and should also listen to all the people. The Select Board role is to hear public opinion, to get input, to hear multiple points of view. Repetition is good, hearing what the people think. Select Board should encourage public participation. How about a Select Board that is open and friendly so speakers don't feel intimidated? I'm not in favor in limiting public discussion.
Thank you.
We can continue that discussion when it comes up on your agenda item.
Okay.
So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment and announcement?
Hi, I'm Sherry Stockdale, 286 Main Street. I have a question for the board. I would like to inquire about where the traffic study is is it almost done? Will we get,
We anticipate the traffic study information in December, I believe, early December. Is that correct, Joe? Yep.
okay. And will that be presented at a select board meeting? How will that, yeah?
Yeah, I believe we'll have a presentation and we'll have the details. Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for a public comment announcement? Okay, on to the consent agenda.
I've asked them to hold on to this one.
Madam Chair, I move to approve item A, the Select Board meeting minutes from October 21, 2024, and item B, vote to accept a gift for the community center from the Harwich Cranberry Festival in the amount of $2,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And so we're holding the October 28th, just so everybody understands. New business. Joe, I'll hand over item A.
Thank you,
to
Madam Chair. Yes, I'm thrilled to announce the appointment of Crystal Legendry. I think you all know Crystal. She has been in our treasurer collector's office for a couple of years now. She's been working under Ed Spellman. She has had the role of assistant treasurer collector for over a year. And I'm thrilled to be promoting her, and I would seek the board's affirmation of that promotion.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
I move that we affirm the town administrator's appointment of Crystal Legendry as treasurer collector.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, did you have?
Aye, but I have a
Oh,
question I can ask
sorry.
after the
No,
fact.
go ahead.
Just wondering, Joe, with the promotion, so what goes on with Ed Spellman?
So Ed is transitioning perhaps into finance. We're discussing with Eric Kinshirf and Ed. Ed's looking to have less hours and spend time with family. So that's something that Eric, Ed, and I are working The goal was to still have Ed tying in the transition period as Crystal goes through everything for the first time. So but there'll be more on that. It may not come from me, it may come from Eric.
Okay. And if I can continue?
Sure, go ahead.
So with this promotion, that then creates a new vacancy, is that, should I understand
So
that
it creates a
correctly?
vacancy in the Assistant Treasurer Collector. That will
Okay.
be posted tomorrow.
Okay.
We wait to see if the affirmation was there. And as with those union positions, it goes internally first, and if anyone's qualified, they'll be promoted internally or lateral, and then we go from there.
Okay, and finally, if I could, and I know Megan had sent out an email, but indicating that there were other applicants, or at least it sounded as if there were other applicants. Did you have a quantity? Do you recall how many applied?
I believe we had 3. The other applicants weren't qualified.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. So moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And then the vote to approve the proclamation announcing November to be Family Caregivers Month. We want to read the proclamation?
Do I get a vote?
Only after you read it.
All right, this November, in Harwich, we recognize the 780,000 family caregivers across our state who are helping their older parents, spouses, or other loved ones live independently in their homes where they want to be. Harwich's family caregivers are among 48 million Americans nationwide who are being recognized in November, Nationally Family Caregivers Month. These individuals hold up a challenged long-term care system. The physical, financial, and emotional toll on them is great. They help their loved ones with everything from managing medications and medical care, meal preparation and feeding, bathing and dressing, chores, finances, grocery shopping, transportation, and more. Many family caregivers work full or part-time and paying jobs, and many cut back their hours or quit their jobs entirely to make sure their loved ones get the care they need. Massachusetts dedicated family caregivers provide 730 million hours of care every year, adding up to $15.1 billion in unpaid labor annually. Everyday heroes, family caregivers in Massachusetts help their older parents, spouses, siblings, or grandparents live independently with dignity. Now, therefore, we, the Harwich Select Board, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the Town of Harwich Charter, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Family Caregivers Month in Harwich. Chances are, if you are not a family caregiver right now, you may be at some point, or you know someone who is, or you will someday need a family caregiver yourself to help you live independently at home. I encourage all Harwich residents to reach out to the family caregivers in their lives, thank them for their incredibly important work they do, and support them if you can.
Thank you, Pete. John?
Before, just curious, before we actually vote on this, is there any chance of changing one line in this?
Only if you read it.
Yeah, well, it's the last paragraph. Now therefore, we, the Harwich Select Board, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the Town of Harwich Charter, Massachusetts, do hereby, it should read the Town of Harwich Charter, the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts do hereby proclaim.
Okay, so with that revision,
I'd move that we accept it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
5-0, and thank you to all the caregivers out there. It's a difficult and thankless job at times, but it's an incredibly important one, so thank you. Old business. And Jeff, I'm going to go to you on this because you had asked to request this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. At our last office hours, we had a few people come in and discuss a little stretch of road from Raptor, on Seth Whitefield Road to Raptor Road, and then the little space between Raptor and Round Cove. And the discussion came up about, at a previous board meeting about maintenance and T-base and fill and a bigger picture. I'm here to discuss and to get the temperature of the board on how they feel regarding plowing that little stretch of road from Raptor to Round Cove. I think from a safety standpoint, it's reasonable. I don't think it's a big ask. I'd like to find out precisely and exactly what our DPW, if anything, if they do anything on Seth Whitefield Road, or if they don't. I'll look to the town administrator for that, if I could get some clarity on exactly what our DPW does or doesn't do on that road.
So according to the DPW director, the practice has been to plow Seth Whitefield, Hawks Nest, to the point of Raptor Road and then turn around and exit.
So is there a reason why he doesn't continue another 0.2 of a mile to the end, to Round Cove, and then turn around?
My understanding is the town's longstanding policy has been there are inspections of the road. It doesn't meet the inspection criteria of the DPW, and the town has not taken on roads of that caliber,
So it's,
as I understand it.
okay, and that's fair. So the issue is the road is not suitable for plowing.
You'd have to defer to the DPW director. I'm trying to recount as he said it, but I don't want to speak for him, nor do I want to say the wrong words.
I asked specifically to have exactly why we do not plow from Raptor to Round Cove Road.
It's a private road that has not been accepted by the town,
Okay.
is my understanding. It's a longstanding practice, and I believe there were several discussions by prior boards and lawsuits.
And there were. So let me ask this then, just for my own clarity, because I've heard, through a little bit of a deep dive, I've heard some different narratives. From Seth Whitefield Road to Raptor, is that a public road maintained by the town?
I don't have the facts on that. My understanding is the town has plowed that. So, Madam Chair, if I could just perhaps defend myself at this moment. I was not directed to handle this matter. The Public Works Director was spoken to about this matter. I advised counsel on this matter, so I'm a little bit dismayed and disturbed as to what the board's looking for from me on this.
My understanding is that this came out of what do you call your get-togethers?
Office hours.
Thank you.
We could call them get-togethers.
Your office hours, and the question was raised as to whether or not they would continue to move beyond where they currently plow to go down to Raptor Road, right?
That's all I'm asking.
Right, and so my understanding from the town administrator, what you're saying is they currently don't do that. They go to the end and they turn around before they get to Raptor.
Again,
Right.
according to the Public Works
Right.
Director, that is the long-standing practice,
Right.
and it's based on prior actions of select boards.
The only thing I can, and I'm just offering
Yeah,
from
please.
my last trip down there about checking out the road, is I would imagine that they don't go all the way down and turn because of
Turn on to Round Cove.
onto Round Cove because
Yeah,
of all
I-
that.
And,
And I
sorry,
don't know where they would turn.
not to interrupt, but I did the same thing several times over the last couple of weeks. And from Raptor on, it widens. And if they can turn around, well, first let me back up. I'm just trying to understand whether or not Seth Whitefield Road is considered private, but we plow it. And if Seth Whitefield Road is considered private, but we plow it, why wouldn't we continue to Round Cove Road, which is a continuation of Seth Whitefield? It's Seth Whitefield Road all the way to Round Cove Road. Maybe I'm wrong. You might be able to help me with this in terms of the names of the roads. But if we plow 3/4 of it or 5/8 of it, and now there's residents who are now building homes, and there could be an emergency vehicle needed down there in the winter, for 2/10 of a mile of private road, as Seth Whitefield Road is in fact a private road in its entirety, why stop at Raptor? I'm just looking for an answer
Also,
to that.
just to go back to the emergency vehicle, we've heard multiple times from ED and FD that they are able to access.
I'm not saying they're not
No,
able to
I'm just
access
saying
it.
you
I'm saying
mentioned
in the winter.
Right,
If-
so,
If the plow stops and they create a berm of snow and they turn around and go back out, that would prevent a safety vehicle from going by Raptor.
do we have information that they create a barrier?
I'm being.
I'm just- I'm
And I don't know, and these are the things I wish I could have asked, but we can't.
So, well, do you want to, I mean, I guess my understanding is you just wanted to understand if we were currently paving.
No,
I mean, sorry, not paving.
don't say paving anymore at this road.
Plowing.
I'm asking if this board would find it reasonable that we would continue to pave if the road. I'm asking if this board would be interested in continuing to plow about 2/10 of a mile if the road was sufficient for plowing. Because now I understand that there's a resident who has suggested and will take care of the potholes and the ruts in the road through putting down T-base. So again, I'm just trying to gather enough facts to determine whether or not I want to put a motion forward tonight, or if I think we can wait another week or two and keep bringing this back until I can get enough information to know whether or not Seth Whitefield Road is a private road all the way through, but we stop 3/4 of the way down and turn around. And, yeah.
Okay. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The policy about plowing, let's parse this into two parts, about plowing private roads has always been, for the last 25 years or more, that it would have to meet the standard of a regular road for us to accept that. He's concerned about breaking the plow equipment and stuff. The secondary question is whether or not that road was up to standard and whether it could be compelled to make it up to standard if indeed it was a public road, and that's been litigated. We're under no obligation to actually improve the roadways for access. This was an immense hearing when we had it. I mean, the whole room was filled up, and people were on notice of that. So I would suggest that Mr. Powers is correct, that the one person who could really give you a factual answer on all of this, and I wouldn't support a motion tonight, would be the highway director, because Joe's not in a position to determine any of the answers to these things. The standard that has to be met was established by the DPW, not by him, not by us.
Are there any other comments, Pete? Anything?
One here, Madam Chair.
Michael?
Ridiculous is the only word that comes to my mind, that it takes an act of Congress to plow 2/10 of a road with everything that we have going on in this town right now. And I think depending on who you talk to, you get whatever answer that person may have. We're talking about plowing 2/10 of a road and residents that are willing to fill the potholes. And I will tell you, Pat, if you want to talk about past practice, the DPW director could be here and talk about all the private roads that they actually plow. They're not obligated to plow, but they plow. Bell's Neck runs right through the middle of the woods off Great Western Road, out to 28. We plow. We have plowed, and I completely disagree with the administrators, whatever the DPW directors told him, because he said in the past that they have plowed to the four corners and made a right and come out on Round Cove Road. I've witnessed it. I've seen it. I'm in there all the time. And it's funny we talk about potholes tonight and how bad the road is, but last time we were here, we had residents and board members talk about, I drove down there and the road was fine. We're talking about 2/10 of a mile. We're talking about new residents on that road that are there past Raptor Road and the litigation that we had. We're talking about a public hearing that was actually advertised for Round Cove Road. And 90% of the people that were in that public hearing were talking about Round Cove Road, and they didn't want their portion of the road extended into the park and straightened out. So again, with everything we have going on, I find it hard to believe we're sitting here talking about 2/10 of a mile and running a plow down. I would certainly support a motion. And again, ridiculous is all that comes to mind. Like Cooper said in the past, DPW director, that he serves at the will of the board. And because this has turned into such a political football, he's giving information that he doesn't have to plow. And if we could go back to the roads that the town of Harwich didn't take when the county gave them to us, there's 20 of them on there. Every single one of them we plow. So there's 23 roads on a list. 3 of them we took formally. The other 20 we did not. And then in reading the most recent correspondence from the county, we're supposed to go to the county and ask them when we're doing projects on these roads, and several of them are involved in the sewer project, We haven't asked them anything. So back to, this is ridiculous. It's embarrassing that we're talking about it.
So I think we can certainly have another meeting and ask Link to attend, but we don't currently have on the agenda, as Dawn has pointed out, that votes may be taken, so
The public should be on notice.
discussion.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
that's another thing that we're not doing correctly. If we're gonna start that conversation, votes don't have to be taken. That doesn't have to be on the agenda. If
That's
it's
fine.
on an agenda, the Attorney General says it's reasonable that an action will be taken. So this will be new because
No,
it's
no,
part of the
I-
political football.
I
And
understand
I
what
would
you're,
welcome a motion from
So I-
Select Board Member Handler.
I understand what you're saying,
May I, please?
yes.
Thank you. I don't think it's going to snow anytime soon. Fingers crossed. I will be bringing this back. I will expect all the pertinent and necessary information I'm asking for. I will put it in an email, whether it's next meeting or the following. It's not an urgent matter. But as you see, this is why we need to get out in front of it, because it tends to go maybe 2 or 3 meetings to get something like this done. So I'm not going to put a motion forward tonight, but I'm certainly going to ask for all the pertinent information that I asked for tonight and did not get. And then we will take this up at a later meeting.
Thank you.
Pete?
Oh, Pete, sorry.
Just to expand on that, Jeff, that pertinent information included in the packet? It will be included in the packet?
100%.
Please, thank you. That's my only reservation tonight.
100%.
There was nothing for me to base a conversation on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just going to add some clarity, too, to that, though. My understanding was, and again, you know, Joe did speak with Link, so my understanding was you wanted to understand what they currently did, right? And so he,
And why they do it.
okay,
So they plowed a Raptor and then they turn around. My question, my
Right.
next question is, but why?
well, I think you originally thought they plowed, and then they lifted their plow and went further down, right? So that's why
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I shared the agenda item
Right.
as described, so we can certainly bring it back
100%.
with more info. But just for the
No,
public
you're-
to understand that nobody did not provide certain information that was talked about further in depth.
And I'll take the responsibility for not putting all of my questions in an email to make it really clear what I was asking for. And certainly if Link could be here next time, that would be an incredible help, so we can in real time be asking the person who's doing the job and determining what happens.
Okay, so we'll bring it back either next week or the following week.
That would be up to you, Madam Chair.
sorry.
I'll be ready as soon as tonight.
Just for the record, the DPW director would have been here anyway because of the topic, the family matter that he had to attend to.
That is
That I'm not
100%
gonna go
acceptable, I
further
think, to myself and the rest of the board.
Yeah, so we'll get back in touch with Link to see what date in the next couple weeks.
Madam Chair, through you.
Yep.
To Select Board Handler, if you could also ask Link, when you're having this conversation, how many private roads in the town of Harwich we actually plow? How many there are and how many we actually plow?
And what standard they're paved to.
We could also do our exercise where we went out to Seth Whitefield, we can drive all said roads.
You're driving.
I'll drive. You get the coffee.
Okay, so we'll
I'm
bring
sorry.
that back.
Oh, sorry, ma-
Yep.
How many roads,
How many private roads?
how many
do we
private roads
plow?
do we plow? And there was another question from down there. And to
And-
what standard?
And to what standard those roads meet? What standard do those roads meet?
Thank you.
Okay, so item B, discussion on property modifications at 23 Walter Road in South Harwich, and you have the deed and legal opinion discussion. Anybody?
I'll kick it off if you want. I couldn't disagree with council more on this one. You know, in fact, in paragraph 2 of her written opinion states that although the deed could be construed to permit stairs, that to me means it could be interpreted that stairs are allowed. First paragraph on the second page, within her opinion, Dona states the property could not be used for the storage, transport, or launching of boating equipments, specifically but not limited to motorized craft sailboats, catamarans, or wind surfers. That to me sounds like the intent was for the people to utilize the water's edge on that property. The stairs were obviously there initially, The language about the language about removing the bathhouse, I think, is irrelevant to the conversation. And again, I couldn't disagree with Council Moore on her interpretation of the deed as written.
Thank you, Pete. Don, anything?
I agree.
Jeff?
I agree 100%. I couldn't disagree more with council on this, and I think intention is clear.
Michael?
I don't want to say I disagree, just so I do, but I would agree as well. I did talk to the conservation agent today, whom couldn't be here also tonight, and she mentioned that. But the erosion seems to be the biggest thing, and the amount of erosion that has been there. I agree on the stairs. Whether or not that's a town responsibility to rebuild the stairs for that neighborhood and that beach, because there is no public parking, is another discussion, but I do disagree with the attorney on this one as well.
Thank you, Michael. Richard?
Madam Chair, Richard Waystack, Harwich, and just 3 points. I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbors, Jean and Bert Barker, who could not be here tonight, who live on Walther Road. You see the deed, it's 38 years old in September. Those stairs were there when that deed was written. Those stairs were utilized, have been utilized for 38 years by the neighborhood. And this is not in my best interest, because I love having those stairs, because it becomes more of a private beach for me. But it's in the best interest of the town to do something about it. Truly, what is in the best interest of the town? Right now, there's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that says, don't use the stairs, in essence. And people are ignoring it or walking down anyway. It is a town property. It's owned by the town. The town has maintained those stairs for 38 years. They're not the original stairs. They have been maintained over the years. And to have nothing there, people are going to still try to go down. There was a board there this summer. People were trying to slide down it. People are going to get hurt. There is liability inherent with it. Unless you fence it all off, that people can't get down there, there is liability. So I talk about common sense, and as any decision should be made at that board, what is in the best interest of the town of Harwich? I think the best interest of the town of Harwich is to replace those stairs, and as a town parcel, the town should pay for the town stairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Matt Sutphin. This property used to be owned by my grandparents. In fact, I've sent a letter to the Conservation Commission about the history of the property. I don't know if you read the letter. I actually came here about something else. I didn't realize this was on the agenda, but I'll use my memory as best I can. Property, my grandparents bought in, end of Walther Road in the 20s. They bought a good portion of it. And the Walther Road piece that is in question here used to be my father's pony field. And my grandparents sold it in 1950 to Howell and Josephine Jenkins. The proviso, though it's not on the deed, the proviso was that they not build anything other than a cabana in my grandparents' lifetime. That was the deal. And not only did the Jenkins live up to it, Josephine died 20 years after my grandmother, and then graced the town with this gift of open land, perhaps the only piece of open land between Chatham and Falmouth. And as such, it needs to be honored. I do not believe Josephine Jenkins gave it or would appreciate being co-opted to provide a private beach for 6 or 7 or 8 neighbors. There's Neil Road. They can all go to Neil Road. Her gift need not be questioned. I do understand the legislature can, in the interest of policy, change, modify, adjust, whatever. But is there some principle here that honors the donor? And I want to make sure that stays in play. Josephine never needed to, and Howell never need to worry about money. They had the patent on seamless copper tubing, so you can imagine how much money they had. This wasn't, this law was not meant to be played around with. It was to be honored the way they wanted to honor it. And so I ask you tonight to think on those terms. I ask you all to be Josephine Jenkins.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the history. I thought she was going to the podium. So currently, we have everybody's opinion. And does anyone want to make a motion? The one thing I would ask is, would we consider, hey, I know Conservation's making the recommendation to people, if they can, to have the bottom of the stairs be metal so they can be pulled up like in the winter, so that you might not have that erosion happen and would protect the bank. So I'd be interested in a motion like that, that would help access the water, but also protect the bank for future access. So, anybody? That's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
with that information, I'd be interested in seeing what exactly Conservation's proposing before I,
Well, right, we would
Sure.
have to get a design.
Right.
And- Right, that'd be a separate contract to pay for the stairs and all that, but it's just a thought in terms of compromise to protect the bank and to provide access. Michael?
I think we need to talk to Amy and definitely get a quote. But the erosion piece of it is something that we have to pay attention to.
Right.
It's great to say we want to put stairs back. And if we also support putting stairs back, we're gonna know where it fits into a budget.
Right.
And whose budget it's gonna come out of, what the design will be. So I think we got a long way to go. I think it's fair to say to Conservation, now that the board doesn't agree with our attorney, and we would like to explore the possibility of new stairs, what it's gonna look like.
that's all I was saying.
Yeah. So the consensus, then, the consensus of the board is we'll go back to Conservation, get their opinion, get a design, and then take a vote. We'd send the construction part, the contract part would be part 2, depending on what that looks like. Okay, so that'll be an item we bring back. Next item, the select board policy on public comment. And I just want to share that, I've heard from some people that they are concerned about the restrictions. This is a policy that we're just drafting to have some guidelines. Other towns, though they may not have them out yet, are working on similar policies. So just to give some background on why this board is currently talking about a policy. So I'll leave it at that and open it up to the board for discussion.
If I could, Madam Chair?
Yep.
I think some of the comments we heard revolve around public comment in the global sense. We're talking about the public comment section of our agenda. This is a portion of the agenda in which we as a board should not interact with the individuals coming forward. It's not an agenda item. It is an information that we have readily available in front of us, and it's an opportunity for the public to come in, share their thoughts and concerns, and then the board decides when and if it becomes an agenda item. There are, more often than not, the folks that come up to the podium are simply providing FYI type of material to the board and to the public. Again, this isn't an opportunity to stymie public input. It's an opportunity to govern the meeting in a manner in which is efficient and appropriate for all involved. I can't remember in the most recent past any time in which we've butted against the 20-minute window if you exclude public employees from talking. I can't recall a time in which a member of the public was going over 3 minutes speaking to us or to the public. So, although I understand the concerns that the public wants to be heard, and I think Mr. Otten stated, we work for the people of Harwich, and he's 100% correct. The objective of this policy is not to stymie the public from interacting with us. What it's designed to do is make their time, the people who come before us, more efficient and effective, so that we can get items on an agenda with supporting material and have an articulate conversation with them on the matter in which they want to discuss. In no way, shape, or form is this designed to stymie someone from speaking on an agended item, and I can't stress that enough. This is strictly the portion of the agenda that talks about public comments and announcements. So that's where I'll kick it off.
Thank you. Don, do you have any?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You folks all know where I'm coming from. I mean, the whole point of free speech is it's easy to defend speech that you agree with. The whole idea was in defense of free speech in general. You still have a couple of problems with this, and I know my one vote isn't going to matter one way or the other, and I appreciate what Pete's saying, but there's no elasticity in this thing at all. E3 has each speaker will be allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes. The chair will curtail verbal comments exceeding the allotted time. Other places actually, in the discretion of the chair, may be limited. There's no discretion in that. It's like you got to do it. The second one is, and I don't know how you get around this because it seems to be something that's intrinsic to what everybody's trying to accomplish. There is no way to presuppose that all the people who show up and speak on a particular subject have come off of a bus outside and they were all part of a group. It's ludicrous to even suppose that they're going to get together to elect a spokesperson when they may not be coming from the same household or even understand who's talking about what. So I have no clue about how that could be administered. But again, I agree with Pete, and I know that we don't limit things in the regular body of the meeting, and I don't think that we should start getting involved in a back and forth. But I repeat, in 25 years, this is a solution to a problem that has simply not existed.
Jeff?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Pete, thank you. Don, thank you. Don, I'm going to disagree, with all due respect, of course, that I think it's simply the people you're speaking with and maybe your point of view, where you feel it's a solution in search of a problem. Where I'm speaking to other people who we also represent, who are desperately hoping for a time limit for people to speak. Not my words, but the words that I've been told, I want to make that really clear, is it's inconsiderate for some speakers to speak for 6, 7, 8 minutes at a time, while others are waiting and while there's a full agenda. So I don't agree with this being a solution looking for a problem. As I stated last meeting, this is a proactive board trying to do proactive things. I'm going to dive into the body of this, if I could, Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
So, procedures, letter E, number 1, shall include a 20-minute period for public comment. I'd like to see some language that removes the 20 minutes. And Pete, by the way, you're 100% right. I've spent the better part of 2 hours going through select board meetings and going to public comment. And if we do remove, or if we allow our incredible staff to have their spots up front, as I stated earlier, so they can leave, and they don't have to sit through more and more things that, they work a long, hard day. I found that most people spend between a minute and a minute and a half on public comment. That's about it. There are several who spend more, a lot more than 3 minutes. They eclipse the 3-minute mark pretty regularly. Most times they speak. I don't see it really ever going over 20 minutes. But my thinking is, the majority of people I spoke to feel really uncomfortable with the 20-minute time limit for public comment, and I feel exactly the same way. And some language that may be included, if we struck shall include a 20-minute period for public comment, maybe something to the effect of shall include public comment, which may be limited at the discretion of the chair based on the meeting's formal agenda, content, and time requirements. So the chair will understand what we have in front of us. They'll also see 22 people looking to speak in favor of the Special Friends Cafe, which I thought was wonderful. And that might be the opportunity for the chair to say, look, if you have similar things that you want to say, just try not to repeat them too much. And I think that may do the job. This one for me came up literally today at 4 o'clock. Item 3. Under procedures, item 3, each speaker will be allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes. I would add per topic, because as public comment moves, new topics come up. And the way this reads, as Don put it, it's very strict, and I would like to see the words per topic added in there. So a certain person could speak multiple times during public comment on various topics. This is one that I found a lot of misunderstanding with. Number 4, letter E, number 4, groups that have multiple speakers with the same viewpoint may consider. Many of the narratives that I've been reading and the things that people have been saying to me was must or shall consolidate. That's not what it says. That's not in our draft. Our draft does not say that if there's 10 people, they all have to find the one person to speak for those 10 people. That's, so I would, I like how that reads. I wouldn't change that, but I think many members in the public feel that it says must consolidate their comments with one person. At least that's what I've been sent by emails. Town employees, as I stated, should be able to have their own space. I'd also add in closing here, Madam Chair, from the public body facing out, this does several things for us. It gives us guidelines. It gives us guardrails. Again, Pete, it reminds us not to deliberate and go back and forth. It's a listening period for the board. There is no agenda item up here that we have any information about. It allows the select board to then move forward and create our own agendas based on what we feel is important. And lastly, the public shouldn't be up there looking for answers. I think this is reasonable. I think it needs a little tweaking. Our draft is not perfect. I believe we've all heard what the public has to say. But I believe wholeheartedly that a policy needs to be enacted.
Thank you, Jeff. Michael?
I don't have a lot to add. The Special Friends Cafe, wasn't that an agenda item and a topic?
They came in for public comment first,
Public
I
comment.
believe,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
We had that back a second
was-
time?
Yeah, that was.
That was an agenda item.
It was an agenda item. Yeah, it was.
Not the first time.
I don't think the first time. Anyway,
Well, we should verify that.
Yeah.
The 20-minute thing, I'm not stuck on the 20-minute thing, but there's a line in E3. 3 minutes. The chair will curtail verbal comments exceeding the allotted time. This isn't much different than town meeting, by the way. The moderator gives a certain amount of time for people to speak. And public comment is exactly that. And to Pete's point, we can't answer you. We shouldn't answer you. And the chair has the right to extend it if she wants to. In this case, he in another circumstance. But if it's an important topic and there's a lot of people to speak, and we don't have a 4-hour agenda ahead of us, the chair can modify that. So I don't have a problem with that language whatsoever in the 20 minutes. The agendas of multiple member bodies of the town of Harwich shall include a 20-minute period for public comment, which can be adjusted by the chair.
Right.
So in more than one instance in here, it says can be adjusted by the chair. And to the solution looking for a problem, this came from our attorneys. And all towns are considering it. Many Cape towns are considering it. Many off Cape have already done it for a reason, because of what happened. And it's to protect the public so that everybody is treated the same. So if it's a topic that the board doesn't like, whatever comes up, the board can't just dismiss the topic. Everybody gets the right to talk in a policy. And if you think it's limited time-wise, I would agree with you. I haven't seen it go on. And oftentimes, if it's an important one, the chair will agenda it for the following week, and we'll make a conversation out of it. So whatever tweaks or musts you want to get rid of, I could probably support that too, but this is presented to us by our attorneys for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We've received this, council has advised us to adopt a policy. We need some guidelines. I think that this policy has a lot of flexibility in it. I don't think that anybody would be unreasonable in this scenario where you talk about in item number 3, where it's, the chair will end it at the 3 minutes. We could probably get rid of that section, but I think the fact that we've got it in above where it's the chair can adjust it. So whoever's sitting in this seat can be reasonable and rational, maybe. And ultimately adjust for meetings, especially in the instance like you gave of the Special Friends Cafe or Pine Oaks 4, we had a lot of people wanted to discuss. So, I think overall we need a guideline. We need to be able to point to something to say this is why we're interpreting how we're going to proceed in a certain manner. Currently, we have nothing. And I do think the way we go about public comment a lot is we lose track of it and we start interacting. So, Don?
Yeah, I'm not going to protract this, and this has absolutely nothing to do whether I do or don't vote for it, but that's the outlier here. 3, there is no elasticity. It instructs the chair. The chair will curtail, and if the language was similar to the rest of it that says at the discretion of the chair, they may curtail people exceeding allotted time, because it doesn't match up with the rest of the language about giving the chair some elasticity.
Thank you, Don. Did you want to comment on public comment?
You got 9 minutes.
Have you bought anybody else's time from them? or-
Sure.
meant to be here for public comment. Would you mind these?
Sure. Yes, I will.
What that is a graphic display of
It's one for-
how few towns in Massachusetts do not have tree wardens. I've been writing several letters about
Could I interrupt you?
So
Sorry.
wait,
We don't
yeah.
have what?
tree wardens.
Tree wardens,
And I'm
that's,
sorry I'm out of,
so can I just ask you though, were you going to comment on public comment
I'm
policy?
not going to comment on this, I'm just taking,
Okay,
missed
I just
this,
wanted to
but
ask
I'm
you.
glad to
Thank
hand
you.
it to you. I'll get back to you on it. I think this is a very unfortunate conversation we're having. History is replete with government trying to control people's participation. And this is admittedly a minor example, and you're trying to put soft edges on it by no mandates of 3 minutes, although that's how I took it. And I just want to suggest to you a thought experiment. We've got a bunch of people out here, 2, 4, 6, 7. 6 of them are black and 1 of them's white. And you're going to say, I'll listen to a white and I'll listen to a black. You will not have a sense of the anxiety of the community. You basically removed yourself from the opportunity to have a better sense because you won't indulge yourself with the passion of your townspeople. If you can think of this as a step down a road that you would not like to go down, I encourage you to reconsider the whole thing. You've done well to date. If the schedule isn't, if your schedule isn't to your liking because you have to stay later or come earlier, adjust the schedule. That would be my response. And I don't say it lightly because I recognize you all give an awful lot of time to the town. I don't want you to mistake my feeling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don?
Yeah, relative to what Matt said, is there any chance that I can request that the tree warden discussion happen as an agenda item in the future? Because it's a legitimate question.
I'm going to make a note of that. Any other,
May I comment on the public comment?
sure, just say your name again.
Sherry
for the record.
Stockdale, 286 Main Street, Harwich. Most people that I've talked to really don't have a problem with the 3 minutes and would welcome that kind of a limit on a speaker. I think the problem that I'm hearing is the 20 minutes. Here's a scenario. A bunch of people show up to talk about one side of an issue, and then the 20 minutes has run out, and there's no time for rebuttal from someone else who might be sitting here waiting to give the other side of it. So effectively, a group could run the clock and speak pro or against some topic in town and not leave time for the other views.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Pete?
And I can appreciate folks having a concern with the 20-minute window, which I think is why it specifically stated that it can be adjusted by the chair. One of the things I'd put forward, and this isn't a motion now, but one of the things I'll put forward is that we attach language in 1E that's similar to other language within the document. It not only says adjusted by the chair, but it will also indicate or the majority of the public body. So in other words, if 3 or more of this body wants to extend it, we have the ability to do so.
Did you say that was under?
1E,
Okay, 1E, all right.
so where it says adjusted by the chair, down, I think it's in, well, anyway, I can't find it right this second, but somewhere in E, it talks about the public body, the majority, the chair or the majority of the public body. So that would mimic the language in 1E. Additionally, I'd be fine on 3E, removing that entire second sentence, which talks about will curtail or changing it to may curtail. Either way, I'm fine with something along those lines. The other thing I would probably look to adjust, which is 5E, and I don't want number 5 to be construed as we don't want to hear from the town employees. I think to Jeff's point, we want them to have their own dedicated time. In fact, I'd love to hear from more town employees than less. So I want that to be clear. And the other thing I would include in number 5E would be town employees or members of the board. And now I'm going to circle back to the 20-minute piece. I understand people's concern. Again, I think we seldom, if ever, run against that 20-minute window. So, you know, I kind of understand where Don's coming from. We're trying to fix a problem we don't or seldom have. But I think what's important about the time window is it's less to do with respect of our time, and I appreciate your comments, Matt, about, you know, we invest some time and you appreciate that time, but it's about other folks on the agenda. And my specific example is the other night, we sat here for, I don't know, an hour and a half to 2 hours with town council sitting in the audience. We don't want to see that as the norm. We don't want folks who are going to present to us and/or staff members, council, whomever, sitting for an extended period of time when the same arguments or the same discussions are being had by a group of people. Again, this isn't to stymie them, it's to place the concerns they bring forward onto an agenda. That's the purpose of the public comment section. So it's not just our time that I'm concerned with, it's the other folks in the audience who are here to participate on agenda items. And that's why, you know, am I flexible on 20? Of course I am. But do I think it should just be a blank number? I'm not comfortable with it just being a whim.
Any other discussion?
Again, good evening, Patrick Otten. I'm just curious why this is coming up now. How long has a select board been in existence? How long has public comment announcement period been in existence? And why all of a sudden this week this policy is being proposed.
So this isn't, it didn't just come up. So council, I don't know, how many, probably 2 months ago?
Yeah, I can take, do you mind if I take this one?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. In
Happy to
in 2016 or 18, I believe, there was an issue in Southborough, and I have a very good friend in Southborough, and we had talked about it in 2016, 2018, I can't remember. And it's, I'm going to paraphrase, I'll make it quick. It was, a person spoke at public comment and was very belligerent. And the chair ended up having that person removed. That person subsequently sued the town and won, rightly so. There were no threats, there was no violence, there was no anything other than some rude and obnoxious words that I think are, by any standard or measure, that's exactly what anybody in this room would have thought. But her free speech was violated. So in order to try and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak, and to Pete's point, there was dozens of people who had to sit there and listen to it. That's, I think, where the 3 minutes came up, is give the public an opportunity, no different than town meeting, to say their piece, give information, but allow there to be a stopping point for that kind of situation. Now, to your question of how long have we been contemplating this? This was day one for me when I came on the select board over 1 3/4 years ago. So this has been in the works for 1 3/4 in my mind. And I've done a lot of research. I put in an awful lot of time. I've spoken to an awful lot of other towns, statewide, spoken to our legal, and this is where we are today. So it's not something that just came up 2 months ago. This is something that started for me back in 2018, before I even thought about running for select board. And then when the decisions came through in 21 and 22, it solidified my opinion even more. That nobody should have to sit through an obnoxious speaker who's taking 6 and 7 minutes to just bomb the select board. I think that's just 100% wildly inappropriate. Now, thankfully, and to Don's point, when we first talked about this, Don, I think you had you brought up the discussion about, physical altercations. I don't see that ever happening in Harwich, but who knows? And since I've been here and since I've been paying attention, there hasn't been anybody who's been obnoxious and said anything derogatory to the select board or personal. So yeah, I hope we're never going to have this issue. But I just go back to the point that if over 2.5 hours of my time I spent looking at select board meetings, most people took 1.5 minutes. Never went over 20 minutes, I think, except for twice. So for people to feel that we're stymieing or curtailing or limiting, it's not the case. And there's provisions in this that state, under the chair's discretion, it can move forward and more people can be heard. So I'm sorry, Patrick, I just don't buy it that we're sitting. Let me add one more thing.
Got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Select boards, select board in Harwich, just like all select boards, have no obligation to even hold public comment. We don't have to do it. So by the sheer fact alone that we are looking for a way to continue to provide the ability for the public to speak and give them some guardrails, give us some guardrails, and make it smooth and efficient, I just don't see a problem with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, ultimately, you defer to the chair to make decisions, continue or stop. And that's the way it's been, and it's always seemed to work. I hope if this goes through, I hope you present it to the public as a positive initiative to encourage public speaking, to say, yes, if you come up and speak, you've got 3 minutes to say anything you want. So I really hope you present this to the public as a positive effort to encourage public speaking, because that's who you people are. You are really representing the people.
So I think that's an important point, and
So, yeah.
ultimately, not to interrupt you, but just to say that having a policy does put something on paper as a guideline versus having nothing written, so that the same argument could be made, right? Somebody from the public can say, well, how come Patrick got to speak for 5 minutes and I got, pushed out after 1 or 2? So it does give the public some sort of guideline as well as this board. And I think that's what's lacking, and to Jeff's point, there is some, law, case law in this, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So I think you can look at it as both. It helps the select board and it helps the public.
Yeah. I mean, you have tough jobs. I understand that. But you really do need to represent the public.
Right.
The public needs to speak, and they need to be comfortable here speaking.
And it isn't easy to
And not
to
many
public
people
speak.
are.
Right,
So,
so, no, I think it's important on both sides.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Richard Waystack. Institutional knowledge of this board over the years, I've watched many, many boards, many, many chairs. Not all were as gracious as the current chair or the chairs currently sitting on that board. Some like to curtail discussion in town. I won't get into names, but in my close to 40 years of monitoring and attending select board meetings, it was not always easy to get up and talk. I do agree with Mr. Otten on that. It's not easy for people to get up to this podium. I think having a policy is a positive thing, encouraging people to speak. Speak in whatever they want to speak about, whether they agree or disagree with the board, the policies or the decisions that the board is making. But having a policy keeps it done in a way that is respectful, that is civil, and what everyone is looking for this day, a little bit of respect to each other. So I think it is a positive thing. I think you should push it as a positive thing, and I thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Richard.
Marvin Parker. Don brought something up. I think there was a question of, is it going to be only one speaker per topic? And Don's example was, well, what if a bus pulls up in the driveway out here and 30 people get off to speak about a topic? Can only one of them speak? And I didn't read that in the draft. Am I misunderstanding that, or can someone answer that?
Oh, that's been addressed from
Well,
what he said.
If I may.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'll fight you for it. There has been, thank you for being here and asking the question, there was an awful lot of misunderstanding around this, where many people from the public were saying to me exactly what you just said. But what if 30 people show up and they have to designate one person? And I'll read. Groups that have multiple speakers with the same viewpoint may consider consolidating their comments or designating one person to speak on their individual behalfs. That's right here in the draft.
So may consider, not be required to.
100%.
Right.
That's what it says now.
That's what it says. I think the first draft said,
Yeah, but that's been handled.
now it's been changed.
Because, my thought on this is 3 or 4 of us could get up and speak about a topic. We'll all use different words to describe the issue. But I think that's what brings clarification, is when you hear different voices using different words, you go, oh, right, I didn't realize that before. So that's why I was concerned with the idea that it would be limited to one, but you're saying, no, that is not the case. Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Did you?
No, not, I just want to stress that this particular item is talking about the public comment section of the agenda. I know we kind of joke around a little bit, but an agended item, folks would not be limited to a 3-minute spiel at the podium. This has to do with the public comment section only. So when we're dealing with an agenda item, there may be a busload of people that show up and they all want to speak, and they can. We're strictly speaking about the public comment section of the agenda and what they're going to bring forward to us as a board or to the general public, and the fact that we as a board should not be interacting with them. So there may be 30 people who show up in that capacity under public comment and announcements, but they're not going to engage with us. So that's why it says they may want to kind of consolidate their thought processes and deliver one message, that's all.
Don?
Yeah, just to remind you from a past meeting, going back to Richard's comment, because my institutional knowledge is close to that. What I'm concerned about, and I think that if we replaced all the language in this thing with the discretion of the chair or the majority of the board, you would get past that, because there have been people of ill will who were chairs who shut people down in the public comment because you got to talk about that as an agenda item, and then goaltended and refused to ever put it on the agenda, so it wound up going around in a big circle forever. They kept having to go back to public comment, they were shut off, nobody ever put it on an agenda, so they came back to public comment, and that went on forever on certain subjects that I know right now, but I choose not to actually discuss. But if you do put that in there so that the chair, at his or her discretion, or the majority of the board, I can't see that that would be a problem anymore.
Thank you, John. Any other comment?
It was a good idea.
So how would the board like to make some more revisions and take another look, and, or
We'd have to
based
do a
on our
second
will
reading
in
anyway.
May, and
Can you just refresh me on first reading? What's, I think, second reading would be the next one, right? With some.
First reading, if I recall, and I don't mean to interrupt anybody,
Please.
but that's where we can make our major edits, right?
That's right.
Yep.
That's what it's
So-
designed for? Is that your interpretation?
Should we change it and bring it back?
Joe?
So I've actually never gone through a policy creation body with this with Select Board in my time. The times that I've read your policy, I believe it says you have a discussion, you refer to first reading. First reading is what I would call substantive change. Second reading is more format, typos, the like. That's my understanding of your policy.
Okay. So,
So I'd like to bring this
Yeah,
back for the
so
second
second reading
reading with
with
the.
the
changes.
revisions, right, okay.
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Go ahead.
So the board interpreted this to be your first reading?
Well, you're saying that's your past policy experience, past practice experience on policy. I'm fine with that, if everybody else is fine with looking at this as a first reading. I personally would have said, I thought the policy,
So on our, on
Would
our
be-
agenda, it says vote to hold a first meeting of draft policy.
right, and so I think.
Probably want to do that then.
I think the draft, I think this is the draft
Mhm.
to bring back. That's how I interpret it.
Fair.
So that we're talking about the revisions we'd like to see and changing, and I like the idea of making the whole, majority of the board vote for extending instead of just putting it on the chair, because if the chair chooses one way or the other, there could be pushback and, so that person ends up in the hot seat. So ultimately, I think we have some revisions to make, and then we do the first reading next week, if we can have it ready for next week or the following week.
Second first reading.
Do you agree?
I don't think it's whether I agree or not. Policy is the exclusive domain of the
Yeah,
select
I
board.
understand. I'm
And
saying,
I'm
does that
trying-
make sense to you?
I'm trying to go off of your policy. I believe your policy says that you vote to have a draft.
Right.
So I move that we make the necessary changes as discussed tonight to the first draft, to create a
create a-
second draft, to then have our first reading.
I'd like to create a draft.
You don't get a second chance for a first impression.
Well, look, I need a second on that motion, if I could get one.
Do we need a motion on that? I would argue that, to Joe's point, we could advertise next week for a first reading.
Right.
And have a clean document with the changes that we came up with tonight.
That's what I think makes the most sense, too, so
And do it.
let's
Okay.
just do it that way. All right, so we'll have a
Motion
first
withdrawn.
reading next week. We'll clean up the draft, bring it back, and have a first reading next week. And then if we have any other things, we should finalize it by the second reading. Okay. Somebody,
She want to speak?
Madam Chair, do you have enough by way of notes, or do you want board members to send their thoughts?
yeah, please send them. I jotted down a bunch under Section E, but I would prefer everybody's comments so that we make sure we don't miss anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now D. Discussion on the draft Select Board policy on grinder pumps. Vote to hold the first reading of the draft policy. Don?
Yeah, this one goes out to the public in general. It's kind of why I wanted to adjudicate this and see it back in writing, because this is not a change. And we had originally done the sewering, and we tried to weed these things out at that point in time where certain people were taking a hit for the town and had to put grinder pumps in rather than a municipal pump in an area. So the idea, I mean, and Michael, you were on the board back then, so we had discussed a lot about the hardship that imposes disparately on certain people rather than other people just because of where they were. But this isn't different. Even when we were buying the grinder pump, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that's nice, but you have to maintain it. You have to have the backup power supply, and if it winds up wearing out, you have to replace it because that was what was going to happen in the first instance. The original policy was, if you're in that bad boy house, you're going to have to buy the grinder pump yourself and then worry about it. This was an improvement over that. But so anybody who's upset that, wait, I got to pay for the hookup, I got to pay for the repair, that was always the case. I mean, this was actually something of a gift that will buy you the first grinder pump because it wasn't fair to make you have to do something that the other hookups didn't have to do.
Thank you, Don. Anybody else on the policy? Any comments?
The only question I would ask is there a warranty that gets given to the homeowner, like everything else you buy?
American Home Repair.
Michael?
I was in the meeting of the water commissioners when they discussed this, and that would be negotiated during the procurement time, how long a warranty we could get for them.
Okay.
So unknown answer right now, but certainly part of procurement will be to try and negotiate extended warranties.
Thank you, Michael.
So to that, I would like to make sure that we have a placeholder in here for, additional language regarding a warranty.
That's, Madam Chair, through you.
Yeah.
I don't think that needs to be part of our policy. That will be part of procurement.
Procurement, okay. Thank you, Michael.
Anybody else? Pete?
I assume this is on the Water and Wastewater Commissioner's letterhead, simply because they took action on the policy we sent, the proposed policy we sent to them?
Correct.
Because the way I read this now, it's their policy. In the sense of, it's on their letterhead with their names at the bottom of it.
I agree. Yeah, it's confusing. It should be coming from us. Don?
Yeah, I just want to parse that because this is one of those unusual things. Again, the most simple way of looking at this is we build it, and when it's done, they run it.
Agreed.
So I'm thinking they're thinking that part of this policy bleeds into them because it makes them, the people who are hooked up, responsible for replacement of grinder pumps and maintaining and doing all that. But in the first instance, the actual installation of them is our problem.
Right.
So-
Hence my confusion, because I'm okay with a joint policy. However, again, the way I read this is their policy.
Yeah.
And while I have the floor, if I could, Madam Chair, my only comment would be on the actual policy, is if under purpose, the low-pressure grinder pump could be spelled out as opposed to just the LPGP, I'm fine. I know in other parts of the document, it's LPGP, and I'm fine with that, but I think under purpose, it should actually spell it out, even though it's at the header.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And to the conversation, I mean, I think the other item on here is, I'm fine with either way or joint, but I also think that, if there's any issue with any of this, they're gonna come back to the select board. So that would be my only want for clarification. Which one is it? Do you have to go back to both boards, or do you just go to one? So whatever this board feels is appropriate, I'm good with. But, I mean, this is the policy, as Don said. I was on the board when we talked about this initially and said that we didn't want this expense to be on the homeowner solely. And obviously, I think we were ahead of the game on that. I don't think that they made that decision in Chatham, and I think they had to go back and look at those. So I think it's a positive thing for the public, but we need to be clear on what the avenue is and how it's rolled out. Michael?
Madam Chair, through you to the town administrator, construction phase, to me, it would mean it would be our policy, not the water commissioners. Do you agree or disagree?
So I would agree, that's what staff has been operating under.
Okay.
And I believe that's why this board sent it to that elected body.
Yeah, the way I read their letter is that's a support for the policy.
Okay.
But I do think for our first reading, because it says vote to have the first reading,
Right.
it should be put onto town letterhead for the first reading. And other than that, no changes. I do have one more, if I may. The new water superintendent, and I talked about this with them at their meeting as the liaison. It would be great if Jason had a seat at the table for the procurement part of this. Certainly, the procurement falls under the town administrator and us, but it would be good if the new water superintendent, wastewater superintendent, had a seat at the table through the process.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Sure, sorry.
He does. We meet weekly with GHD. In fact, our discussion today was, assuming this would go to first reading, we're then progressing towards procurement. As the commissioners have put in their letter, the town, if I can say it that way, so construction, is relying upon the recommendations of both the superintendent and the engineer, and both the town and the engineer agree the superintendent's going to have a key role in that. We want to make sure we're acquiring what they can service, not that they service the grinder pumps, but that as they service the system that's using grinder pumps. So he's been at the table every step of the way.
Okay, thank you.
Lastly, if I may, the, I lost it, never mind. Oh, church, sorry, I wrote it down so I wouldn't lose it. If you remember correctly, a month or so ago, the church, East Harwich, who had to purchase their own grinder pump, was before us, and I think they're waiting for this policy
They are.
to be read in, and then we would take back up the conversation about reimbursement.
That's right, because I followed up on that.
St. Peter's?
Yeah. And so that's exactly it, because I had followed up on the status of that, but we need to come up with the finalized policy, and then we can go back to.
Well, I think, and price, right? Cost.
Right, exactly, so. Anything else on this item?
Which, just as a postscript to everything, as a positive. Not only does this protect people where we weren't initially thinking of doing that, but it also spells out, because originally, if Jeff needed a grinder pump, Jeff went out and bought a grinder pump to the spec. We're subjecting this to the overall leverage buying power of the town to go out on a procurement, so it's another way we're trying to help them out.
And they did reach out, when they were buying this. I think they had conversations with Dan about what to try to get, so. Okay, so we'll bring this back. Yep, sorry. go ahead,
So
John.
what I've heard from the board is I think one general Scrivener's correction, LGP will be identified, and then we do the parentheses. And it's to be put on select board letterhead.
We could,
Is the board then looking tonight to set the first reading?
I think we can, yeah.
I think we can.
Yeah, so do we need to read it out loud? Read the whole thing out loud?
No, he.
No, no, you-
he-
No,
he
I'm
would.
just
setting the
saying,
first reading.
I'm just,
He would.
Well, in the future perhaps, but
Pete would like
save
to.
that for another night.
As written. My only comment on that is,
Can't say LGP.
He graduated, you don't have to worry.
my only comment is for consistency, if the language in both C and D are equal, right? As far as vote to hold the first reading. So I guess what we're saying is let's bring it back for a first reading. So we're consistent with C, otherwise I disagree with C, so I want to stay consistent.
I move that we vote to have the draft recast with the changes that we were talking about and bring it back for a first reading.
Next week?
Up to you if you want that in the motion,
Yeah,
that's
we'll
fine.
just bring it back next week.
Sure.
There's not many changes anyway, so. All right, for a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contracts.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve a contract with Specialty Vehicles, Inc. for the purchase of an ambulance in the amount of $513,119.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just quickly, we have the chief here tonight, reading through how we got here and the 2-year replacement and the 30 to 36 months from now that we're actually going to get this ambulance and what that does to our fleet, and then maybe we can come back for a new policy so that we're not lagging behind. And I have noticed the price of these have gone way up.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you
Concerned
mentioned
about
that.
the amount of time. That's
Yeah.
the moral of my story.
So David Blank, Fire Chief, couple things. I was just thinking as you read the price on that off, when I first started getting involved in this, they were about $285. So it's crazy how much they've gone up. To your point, this 36-month replacement cycle is a concern for us. We're gonna order 2 more ambulances in the current cycle before this ambulance arrives. We have submitted a plan to capital to just, as part of FY '26, to try and address like a stopgap of replacing 2. Again, it'll be 3 years out, but hopefully when they all come due, we'll get back into the cycle again. At some point, the pressure has to come off this delay that we're in. But talking to all the vendors that we've talked to and talking to the company that we deal with, there's no end in sight right now. This ambulance was ordered, not ordered, but when it was placed in queue, it was number 6,000, and they delivered 5,400, so there were 600 ambulances, and they do 200 a year. So it's crazy. And they're one of the quicker companies right now. There may be other alternatives out there that we can look into, but what they're gonna end up being is a lesser quality product we're gonna end up at the same point, just replacing them sooner. So we're working on it. If we can find a stopgap to stop the bleeding, we will. Kyle, had a long conversation with Kyle, DPW. His concern is about $200,000, the maintenance starts becoming very cost prohibitive. So that's what we're gonna bump up against. So probably having 3 ambulances pushing 200,000 miles when this one arrives.
Thank you, Chief. Glad to hear you're working on it. I just really wanted to put it out there that you have my support because the numbers don't add up here.
Yeah.
And we're gonna start going way over. There's
Yeah.
a reason we have the program, but if it's not working, we're gonna have to
Right.
tweak the program.
Yep.
And is the amount you're putting on for the capital the same as the 513 again?
Yeah, so we'll be looking for 2, so
Yeah,
it's
okay.
about $1 million, yeah.
Pete?
So Chief, will the rig you get actually be model year 2024, even though you get it 3 years down the road?
No, it'll probably be, it depends on when the chassis is procured, but it probably will be in line with whenever it's built. So what basically this boils down to right now is COVID caused such a backlog in building, and then Ford couldn't get the chips, so there was such a delay. The manufacturers are reluctant to add staff and shifting, to upsell, to overcome the delay they have. So it just pushed everything out.
Sure.
So I think what we'll probably see is it'll be a 27 or a 26 when the time comes.
Okay, and if I can continue, so, and to your point, they're not gonna ramp up because there's profit in delay. So, but historically, what was the turnaround? Pre-COVID?
We'd have been looking for this ambulance to be delivered between December and February, usually.
Really?
Yeah, if we ordered in July, between December and February.
That's drastic, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Did we get a motion?
You have a motion and a second,
Oh,
no?
we do, sorry.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Item B,
Approve a change order with GHD Inc. for the Phase 3 sewer extension project to include a bathroom at Pleasant Bay East Pumping Station in the amount of $39,000 and authorize the town administrator to execute.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have,
Michael?
yeah, through you, Madam Chair. A $39,000 design for a bathroom?
You're lucky the Pentagon's not building it.
So
I
actually,
guess so. My real question is, why do we need a handicapped accessible battery at a bathroom at a pump station?
so I was
That's where I'll
actually
start.
gonna go to Joe to give the background on this item. Joe?
I'm reluctant to after that setup, and I do mean setup. As you may be aware, Phase 3 calls for 5 pump stations, so 4 of them are small enough that the town was not required to install I have to be precise in my language,
Gender neutral.
thank you, gender-neutral,
Accessible facility.
thank you, gender-neutral accessible restroom facility in an unoccupied building. The town was able to get waivers on the smaller scope buildings But as we saw with other public works projects, and I will add that this directive came down from the building code and the plumbing code, I think the week after we had done 100% design, and there were no allowances for any of that. Our former water wastewater superintendent was on top of this, presented information to the board on the other four. We just felt that it would never pass for this. So the $39,000 is simply to design, not the pump station, but the pump station's bathroom, to meet the current code that was established last December.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, we just further, I mean,
That's somebody's paycheck.
GHD, I know is our engineer, they've done a great job for us on design, but I'm stuck on this $39,000, and I'm also wondering if we can apply to the state for a waiver on this. This seems to me to have to be an oversight on somebody's part, having to have a restroom, and I know we've had this conversation in the past, but having to have this type of restroom in a pump station that nobody's gonna be allowed in, other than people working there that would have a short drive to the water department or any other town building, if they needed to. So, have we done any homework on, A, the estimate sounds a little high to me, B, can we please try and get out of this?
So the time to try to get out of it is past. That's what the superintendent did a year ago. Talked about all 5 bathrooms. Watched the meeting. I think at that particular meeting, I believe there was at a public university, a simulator device for aviation, and they did not grant the allowance for that. So that simulation device is required to have a gender-neutral accessible restroom regardless of how it's used. So this is a result of getting what we could out of the state building code. And I would say, generally speaking, I think the dollar amount is reflective of certain thresholds we don't want to cross in procurement.
Did you also say, though, that it was also based on the size? That's why because the.
Yes,
other
the
four-
size of this
the size,
particular,
yeah.
this is the largest of the 5 pump stations. The building code agency, I'm drawing a blank on the precise title. But the larger the structure, the more certain they were in not allowing any allowances. There was no allowance for the fact that we were 100% designed before this went into effect. So there was no grandfathering, if you will. There was no allowance for the fact that this is a public project for a public benefit. There was no allowance for the fact that we were relying upon the Commonwealth to give us funding for this project. None of that mattered. This was a separate item done by a state regulatory body that has full autonomy.
And there's no way to reduce the size to get back to the other 4 sizes?
So if we were to reduce the size of it, that would be an engineer design cost.
Yeah, right.
And it doesn't guarantee that they would
That they
accept
would
it.
allow it, right. Pete, did you have a question?
Well, you asked one of my questions, but I'm with Michael. I'm stuck on $39,000 just for the engineering design for a template they're going to pull out of a drawer and put on the table, because these units, they're not unique, right? Harwich doesn't build something drastically different than Chatham or Dennis or any other town. So I'm stuck on $39,000 just for design. I'd love to know what then the additional cost is going to be for build, because that's a whole nother element, right? But I was hopeful to the path you just went on, Madam Chair, is that if we downsized, again, we have 4 other structures already in place. I would assume any additional design cost or modification cost for a smaller structure would be minimal, not $39,000, if it would lead to the elimination of this gender-neutral accessible restroom.
The understanding from the state is reducing the size would not.
So, Madam, I'm also stuck at, so it's $600 a square foot just to design it. So, do we have to use GHD for the, can we find another architect?
I'll defer to the board on any action you want to take.
I'm asking I guess,
If I
Is that
could put
the
it out
only-
there, this is not the fault of GHD.
no, I'm not saying it is.
And at the time all of this was being considered, there were no other applicants that were as far along design as the town of Harwich was for our Phase 3 wastewater sewering. And all of that fell on deaf ears. So my frustration is that a year ago, right after design and everything was completed, all towns found out that there was a regulation that was promulgated in under a week that went into effect immediately, and this is the net effect of that. So for me, GHD is the best vendor in place because they've designed our entire system and all of our pump stations. So to me, there's little return in seeking another vendor. Price is always negotiable, and I can certainly talk to Mark about the overall cost. But I will make the point, there were no others, there was no design, there was nothing out there when we were stuck with this. And so, and I want to emphasize the work of the former superintendent and our plumbing inspectors. They did a phenomenal job getting us to the point where 4 were waived, the 5th one, we saw no hope.
Madam Chair, through you.
Michael?
I would agree with you on GHD. They've done a great job for us. And I, for one, I would feel a lot more comfortable, given the amount of work that we're giving them, and we did this with somebody else on Phase 2, is going back and expressing how the board feels about $600 per square foot.
Absolutely.
To design it and see if they can sharpen the pencil, I guess would be the best way to say it. But I, for one, am not comfortable paying $39,000 of taxpayer money for a design on something that we're getting stuck with because of another regulatory body. So if somebody was willing to remove their second, I would.
I do. I remove.
I'll remove my motion and ask that the town administrator work with GHD.
You did? So removed.
Who had the second?
I had the motion.
Oh, I did the last one, sorry.
No worries, no worries. I'm happy to remove.
Well, I'm getting thrown off because I'm looking at the clock and it's
I know.
8:38. And it's not 8:30 yet.
Right,
so-
exactly.
all right.
It is somewhere.
And so just to tag on to what Michael had to say, if I could, Madam Chair,
Sure.
if it's at all feasible, could you give us an estimate of what the actual construction portion of that bathroom
Oh,
is going to be?
absolutely. And what would be helpful is if the board approved the design not to exceed $39,000 and to authorize me to go back to the vendor saying, look, if we can come to a better price, we can agree on this. However, the concerns are, this needs to happen, meaning the design and the work and everything else, and we run the risk of having the Commonwealth look negatively on the project generally. That's my concern. Again, I'm never going to be the person who will speak to the validity of the regulations. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in the public sector who's dealing with this that would make that argument. Again, for me, they amended the regulation on uninhabited buildings. So the absurdity is absolutely there. The fear is, what does it do to our project? What do these delays cost in other areas of the contract? But I share the board's frustration, believe me, this is where staff and I were just about a year ago.
It's reasonable, though, that we could have this back on the agenda next week, and it wouldn't after the conversation. The problem with voting not to exceed 39,000, we've tipped our hand. I'm not trying to hold anything up, but given the fact that we just voted $50 million at last town meeting for these projects, I think it's important for this board to show the public we're paying attention and not just accept change orders in this amount. Now, when I first read it, I thought it was for construction. It was a little more palatable. Further reading, for the design, I think at least maybe somebody from GHD could come next week and explain to me why it cost $39,000.
If I may, Mark Granville offered tonight. I assumed it wasn't necessary, that's on me. We can have Mark come back next week.
Okay, thank you. Don?
As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't need to be if you renegotiate the price.
Not that anybody wants to hear this, but the other cost is going to be the ongoing maintenance of it, because I can't imagine anybody be breaking into the pump stations on their own. But now that we're broadcasting that there is a unisex bathroom available if you just break into it, I can imagine that's going to be a problem at some point
There's only going to be one parking spot.
for an uninhabited small building. These people are,
And I'll go on the record, Madam Chair, that I'd be
Insane.
happy to piss off the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay.
they already feel that way.
All right, anything else? We'll bring that back. Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few to go through tonight, as well as some other updates. First, I'm pleased to announce that we have a human resources generalist coming in to work for our organization. So Angelique McGibbon comes to us from the Cape Cod Regional Vocational Technical High School right down the road. She's worked there for, I believe, close to 7 years, has been their payroll and human resources generalist. So Angelique is looking to come on board. There had to be some slight negotiation with our partners at Cape Tech. She'll be starting on Monday, December 9th, but it's great to have Angelique join the team and with someone with such a strong background in municipal and/or local government human resources.
Thank you, Joe.
A couple of contracts to announce. There's a contract for pickleball court resurfacing. This was a contract with East Coast Seal Coating Incorporated. This was in the amount of $25,600, and it's for the resurfacing of the remaining 4 pickleball courts at Brooks Park. As you may recall, there was funding for this at the 2023 annual town meeting under Article 32 through Community Preservation to finish the project. So again, 2023, but CPC funds on that. This is considered public works, so this would be a horizontal project, not a vertical project, so we did it under Chapter 3039M. Additionally, and I'm announcing the contract for a television broadcast computer. This is contract with One Diversified, and it is a BroadPix, PIX, computer in the amount of $13,278. This is going to be used for television production in our small hearing room right across the way, and that's to account for recent equipment failures in that room. Funding for this emanated out of the 2020 article for town meeting, Article 20, and it's funded by the Cable Fund. Additionally, there is the contract for the replacement of the fence at the senior softball field. This is a contract with New Generation Landscape and Fence, and it's for the replacement of the chain link fence at the senior memorial softball field. Contract amount was $43,500. As you may recall, 2024 annual town meeting, Article 34 appropriated $110,000 in community preservation for replacing the fencing at the senior softball field. Again, considered a construction project under 3039M, and we were delighted to have 9 sealed bids come in, far below the appropriation. So as you know, with the CPC's policy, we would expect that additional money would be returned. And I think I may have covered this one before, but as you heard our health director recently talking about, we have used our opioid settlement funding to continue with Gosnold in the realm of cognitive behavioral programs, and that was a $5,000 procurement. And then, last but not least, as far as the printed announcements, I will tell you that we were made aware by Mass Department of Transportation late Friday that beginning tomorrow, Mass Department of Transportation District 5, which covers Cape Cod, will be doing work in and around Route 6, specifically South Dennis to Orleans, Route 6, Mid-Cape Highway, exit 78B, which goes all the way down to the Orleans Eastham Rotary. They are scheduled to start tomorrow. They're going to be replacing the highway delineators and barriers, and they expect this, I believe they have it here somewhere. They expect the work to be just this week only. Other general updates, Madam Chair? Oh.
Can I just ask one question about that? I know we have no jurisdiction over DOT, but it seems like it's been 2 years or something more than that. They're going to be here. Can somebody just raise the issue with them? that there's so much tree overgrowth there. There's a lot of signs that are obscured by tree branches and limbs now because they didn't do anything this year at all.
So I can work with staff to ask them
Yeah,
about
if
that.
you, just ask the question.
Further updates, Madam Chair, I'm trying to do this alphabetically in my head. With regard to Austin Road, I am working with council and staff on that matter. Last Thursday, I advised GHD and Robert B. Howard that they should begin the process of acquiring the materials. We would expect that final approval will be in place when they want to have it delivered on November 13th. I have a follow-up conversation with council tomorrow on the matter. On Bay Road, as you know, there was a property adjacent to Bay Road, the sewer main there. I'm going to be convening a meeting of the property owners and all of the vendors that have a role in that matter. We've been flushing the sewer main for the better part of 8 months on that. GHD, the water wastewater superintendent, and I have been analyzing and investigating this, and I've informed the family that lives adjacent to that of our next steps, so looking to follow up on that one.
Thank you, Joe. You all.
I believe that covers everything.
Okay.
Probably good.
Select board members report?
Madam Chair, if I could, before I jump onto that, so if I could follow up, Joe, on the senior softball fencing.
Yep.
So obviously, the bid came in much lower than the article that was approved. Is that money being, the balance being turned back to the CPC?
That's the standard operating practice. As the departments give their updates to CPC, they would notify them of how much was fully expended, how much is remaining, and then they do a vote to take the funds back.
Okay. And on the, I'll call it the PIX TV.
Broad PIX?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
2020 article.
Yep.
Could you send us an update on what's left in that 2020 article after
Certainly.
this expenditure?
I can tell you, original vote on that was $16,000. This is just over, call it $13,250. There may be a balance, but we'll find out.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering. I assume this was the first real expenditure from that article, because it was only 16 grand. This is 13, so I assume if anything, there was only a few bucks spent. But yeah, if you could give us an update, that'd be great. Madam Chair, if I could, can we put on the agenda, all subsequent agendas until such time, the update on the finance director search firm? And the reason I
Today, I
okay,
apologize.
that's
Yep.
okay, so we can go back to that in a minute, but in some other conversations that I had, I'd like to talk about this subject again with the board, but I'm happy to listen to what the town administrator has to say before I move forward.
And I apologize for that. That was on my list. The Collins Center reached out to me after second notice. We are partnering them, with them on an intermunicipal agreement, so we're working on the language and the scope. The dollar amount came in far less than what I would have anticipated, which I'm happy about. It's, I think, just under $10,000. I met with the finance director last week to make sure we can secure, if need be, by transfer, the funds available for that. So I hope to have more information in the next coming weeks with Collins Center on that search. Additionally, we do have candidates that have applied. The finance director is reviewing them and will be meeting with candidates. And then perhaps if they're qualified, I'd be meeting to then make recommendations for the board.
Okay, with those applicants, are we able to come in and take a look at the resumes?
I don't believe so under the personnel laws, because their information's not supposed to be made public until they're listed as a finalist, and they shouldn't be listed as a finalist until they give their consent. So that's why there's sort of that barrier between the process. I will tell you that if the board, you have the right to do a search directly. And that way, anybody that would respond, if the board interviews, they would be informed before anything went public that they are considered a finalist under the law. So they want to make arrangements with current employers, things like that. But presently, you would be able to do that because they haven't surrendered their rights yet.
Okay, thank you for that. Madam Chair, to you, do we still meet with the boards and committees annually?
Yes.
When do we kick that off?
Normally, probably right around the fall, we should be getting their reports, right? Or no, the beginning of the year when they finish out.
December.
Yeah, December, January, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Also, Madam Chair, to you, can we schedule, and I don't recall the exact number, but can we schedule an executive session to begin the discussion on the upcoming union contract negotiations? And if we could also include any non-union contracts that are up June 30th. And finally, and I'm sorry, I can't remember it, what that chart is called, but the compensation chart.
Classic compensation table.
The
Yep.
grade,
Yeah, if we-
the grade,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if that's,
Well,
if that's all permissible, I'd love all that to be in an executive session sooner than later, so we can start to plan our process and create a, unified thought as a collective group.
Yeah, you said union, non-union, and you said,
I just want that table to be, we keep
Oh, and the
talking about
tables.
adding, step 10 or whatever it is, and
Employment contracts.
yeah, so I actually had that coming back again because we need to, but the table wasn't an executive. It was for a public session. And what about the timeline? What are you thinking for the executive session timeline? Like next,
On the matter that,
on the union and non-union?
so we have an obligation to begin the process in January. I think this is the right time to have these conversations. I've made council aware generally that we hope to have this, so I'm very agreeable to whatever timeframe you want.
So the next couple of weeks is reasonable, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And no, just can we get a copy of or if they can be in the Dropbox, the existing contracts that are up for negotiation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Don? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm done. I've used enough time.
More than 3 minutes.
Yep.
Anyway, I just want to bring up, once again, the potential for a settlement in the golf course restaurant. Be anywhere close?
We have opinion from council last week. I'm meeting with Roman, I believe, on Thursday to review the net effect of it.
And secondarily, I don't want to be controversial about anything, so I'm not going to be. We missed the meeting on Friday. I'm not convinced that we needed a real meetings for the Brooks Academy, because the only thing we're looking to do, and the instruction for the board was present them with a number that it's going to cost to finish the building so that nothing happens for 5 years. That was the only discussion we were going to have, and I don't think we need the meeting as much as we don't get to direct the activities of any employees. So through you, if you could ask Sean to price out, I'm not even limiting it to Linda's statement, in his mind, what it would take to finish the whole thing so we could hold another stakeholders meeting and then report back to the board with a number that we can all agree to. That was the entire sum of the meeting.
If I could, I believe Sean already has that. We talked today. What Sean can produce is what he thinks the building needs. If that's what you're looking for, staff has that, and I can arrange to have that come before you. But I
Yeah, we
believe
were-
that's different from what other advocates have been talking to Sean about.
And I understand that. There was the number from the capital plan last year, which was a limiting number. We all agreed that we didn't have enough money to do everything, so we kind of focused. Then there's a number that might be associated with what Linda's bringing up. Then there is a number to do what I just said, finish the building for 5 years so nobody comes back for any other requests. And the question then becomes, is that a bigger number than what Linda provided you with, or a smaller number? But once we have that to be able to discuss, I just don't want to go into a meeting with nothing and we think that we're going to have 12 people come to some sort of mystical conclusion about what it's going to cost. It has to be based on somebody that knows what they're doing, and Sean's the guy that we'd have to rely on.
So, can I ask a question? I'm a little confused because I have not been involved in these conversations with Brooks Academy. My understanding was we had an original number which was around 600,000 to 700,000, and then we came back and we were talking about going for like 1.1 with the special town meeting, if we had one. What number is floating around there now?
We never developed an actual number to go to.
No, I know
town
that,
meeting.
but we talked, there was a number put out there in terms of if we were gonna go and do everything correctly at once.
But that's my point. It can't be driven by us giving them a number and then backing into what they can finish. It has to be based on, this is what I see needs to be done, and this is what it would cost to be done, in my estimation, and then we can have that discussion in this room. Then, once we're sure that everybody's on the same page, we come back to the select board with the report that the select board asked for. Would that be your,
That's how I see it.
so we don't really need the meeting if you can if you understand where we're heading to that.
Well,
It's a
if I may,
request.
I think the only disconnect is the concept of what, I think I've heard you say, what Sean says we need for the next 5 years. Sean has what he believes that building needs for further renovations to get us beyond the effects of a temporary occupancy, so to speak. But that differs, and I think, personally speaking, it sounds like it differs greatly from what others are looking for, so that's the disconnect.
If we could just identify what that is, that he does believe and maybe they don't believe, or what he doesn't believe and they do want to advocate, at least we'll have an idea of what that divide is. I understood that he may have in his head had that too, but there's no way to compare whether the whole thing is being covered to the point where we want it completed, unless I know from him what it is off of that list that, I see these 5 things over here, but I don't really think we need them. I mean, and that's fine. If that's his feeling, then that's what we're looking to hear. Correct?
Well, I would just add, there's 2 lists that we're working off of. One list is Linda and Lynn's, which they provided us back in, I think, July-ish?
First week of August.
Yeah, first week in August. And then the list from Sean Libby, who we don't have
I haven't seen
that
it.
information. So I would love to see the 2 lists merged together and get a number, because I think, as Don put it, we'd like to finish this once and for all. So if Sean has not looked at Linda and Lynn's list, there's no value, I don't think, in having a number brought to us. Would that be fair, Don?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. There may be a third position. It may be Sean's view of this finishes it, Linda's view of what finishes it, and certainly there's the capital plan number, which we all agree is not going to finish it. And I think Michael said it best, is that we keep coming back over and over for requests to do more and more for the building. The public doesn't have an appetite to be able to get to the point where we keep coming back every year saying, well, you thought it was done, but it isn't done. So we may or may not support it as a board. I don't know, because I don't know what the magnitude of the number is. We need to see that in order to see whether we can make the case that the public would support it. But something has to happen, because it can't go on with a certificate of occupancy.
So just so I'm following
Yeah.
this, Linda and Lynn sent a list of sort of a
In August.
wish list,
Yes.
is that right?
I wouldn't
Yes.
call it that in front of Linda, but yes, I think that
Well,
would
I mean-
suffice.
Something like that.
Something like that.
And Madam
Yes.
Chair, if I could,
Sure.
according to Sean today, he met with those 3 individuals on October 22nd and went over it and expressed his beliefs on the one list that Sean and I believe exists. The one list that captures everything, including their wants, so to speak.
Well, that's-
So Sean reported today that he's already had that conversation with representatives, I don't know if it's Brooks Academy or the Historical Society, but they're sort of commingled.
But it's our subcommittee. That's kind of what I'm saying. I haven't seen it, and Jeff hasn't seen it.
So would that go back to the full, would this be your
It'll go back to the
stakeholders meeting?
stakeholders meeting, but only after we see it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Do you want to see it outside of the meeting?
Yeah, because I want to be able to put it on an agenda, much like an agenda is assembled for us with a
I
packet.
can work with staff and send that to you. My concern remains. 2 of the individuals that talked to Sean are on your stakeholders meeting.
No,
No.
Linda's not.
I wasn't talking about her.
Okay,
He met with Lynn, Linda, and Anita.
Oh, Anita was there, okay.
This, I view that as a working group. The only organization that was actually created by the select board was a subcommittee of Jeff and I. Those other people are resources, but there was never a vote of the Board of Selectmen to create a subcommittee.
If you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that. I'll defer to you on that. I
You
can
looking
get,
at the chair or me?
I'm looking in the direction of your
direction.
chair to everybody.
The chair.
I am very comfortable with that, and I've worked with staff, so I'm sure we can produce something and have a discussion in some manner.
And can you share that with the whole board?
I can do whatever the board directs me
Just
to
so
do.
we're all in.
And that may or may not be what we're going to recommend either.
Right, but so that we all know the numbers that we're talking about.
Sure,
Is
you
this
did,
another
you
one?
did say. Now we're by a second.
Another one already.
I would just like to see the list and the number to vet it before we have a stakeholder meeting.
So we can forego the meeting, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll be able to distribute that, Joe?
I'll work with staff and,
Great.
yep.
Thank you.
If I may,
I passed my 3 minutes anyway,
Michael?
so it's.
just leave me out of it. Sorry, I don't want to see the numbers. I want to see the final report from the subcommittee and the stakeholders when it's done, and have a number that we can kick around and support or not support.
That's our objective.
So between now and then, I have a lot of other stuff to do, so keep it.
So, Madam Chair, there was a request to share with the entire board. I've understood that request. Is there anyone else that wishes to be omitted from that information?
I don't need to see it. I can wait.
Okay, thank
I can
you.
wait.
I'd like to see it.
Would you like to
Thanks.
continue with your select board member report? Jumped right over me.
It's not my
Since
turn.
you
I was
jumped
only
him.
asking for additional information
Okay.
on a subject that we were just talking about.
Well,
So
then-
I feel like you're out of line.
Madam Chair, I will apologize to Select Board Member McCaskill, and I will ask my 2 questions in the proper order and sequence. The first one, Joe, so I understand the books have been closed. I spoke with Eric, the books have been closed
Fiscal year 2024.
for '24. And now I'm looking toward the board for a little direction to create a meeting with FinCom, 2 members of, or, I'm sorry, Bob McCready from FinCom, Town Administrator, a Select Board member to, as we talked about back in June, I think, to go over.
So I thought we were going to have a joint meeting with FinCom in early December, because I've already tried to aim for an agenda date for that.
And, sure, I'm just bringing back to the table what we had talked about
Right.
a few times now with having a rep from FinCom, a rep from Pete from Select Board, and Joe.
So do you want to have a preemptive, like, before you have the?
That's what they've
joint
requested.
FinCom?
It's the board's pleasure. That's what I'm asking, is does the board feel that's necessary, or should we move into a full-blown meeting with FinCom?
Well, no, we can have, I mean, like I'm saying, the FinCom meeting, the joint, that would, the reason I said early December was because then we would have draft budgets to also review with them, which would make that meeting more meaningful. They want to have a meeting prior to go over the books being closed and what those numbers look like.
I'm happy to, sorry.
Joe?
Thank you. To further that, Capital Outlay Committee and I have an obligation to present the draft capital plan to you and the Finance Committee in a joint meeting, quote, sometime in December. So we are working towards the first meeting in December, December 2nd, with December 9th as a backup. My understanding was that could be a meeting where you talk about the capital plan as required, but also preliminary numbers for the operating budget and anything else. So you are, in less than a month, you'll already be meeting jointly with FinCom if that helps this conversation.
Because
I would see what the board thinks.
what's the pleasure of the board in terms of having a preemptive and then a follow-up joint meeting?
Couldn't hurt.
And if we have a preemptive, not to interrupt, but we're going to have to appoint somebody from the Select Board to do that.
Right.
We have a liaison.
Yes, we do, and that liaison would nominate Pete. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. So if that's the pleasure of the board, I'll reach out to FinCom tomorrow, and we'll schedule that meeting, work through you, and we'll try to figure out what's good for you as well.
So you're going to do 2 members of FinCom?
I think it's Bob McCready is the only one representing FinCom. It would be
Oh, sorry.
myself, and then it would be
Okay.
Town
Is
Administrator.
Bob the new chair? Yeah.
No, Bob was the one that was nominated an
Oh, to
appointment
do
to do this.
prior to,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Yes,
If I could broaden your guest list to include one more person,
Yeah, there's one more missing.
that would be the finance director.
That's a good point. Yes, he would have to be there. Yes, Eric would need to be there. And then my second question is, it's probably an easy one. The engagement letter for the CPC true-up. I think that has to come back to the board, if I remember right from our last discussion, to vote on the letter.
So it doesn't have to come back to the board, given the dollar amount of the threshold, and I finalized the paperwork today for Markham.
Great. So I'm talking more about the deliverables, what the board is looking for from the engagement letter in the contract. Because if I remember, Pete wanted something brought, you wanted a report brought back to the board. I think Michael wanted something as well.
So.
I believe that
Numbers
was
weren't
covered in
right.
the scope of
So
service.
the
Was
one-
it? Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I just want to ask everybody, because there's a lot of asks at the end of the meeting, and then there's agenda items. I just want to make sure that we don't miss anything. So if you can all individually send me an email with your asks for agenda items or as well as follow-up items, because I think that's what happens is I'm taking some notes, Joe's taking some notes, everybody has some asks, and for whether they're agenda items or just updates. So just to have a better, more clear history of what everyone's asking for, I would ask that everyone does that, because it also means that staff needs time to prepare too, so, thank you.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thanks.
You want to
I
say
have
it?
nothing.
Now.
I have some stuff, but I'm going to email Madam Chair as she just asked.
Does Julie have any?
Thank you. I don't have anything, except social media continues to prove itself to be true and full of misinformation, and that's all I'll say with that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.